These are some cells with some fresh water. See those big bubbles coming out of there? Bigger than usual bubbles. Every time you put new water in these things, I've noticed this where you need to run them for a bit and then they'll start producing fine bubbles again. Again, I don't know. I say we're above that 100 mark, so we're still producing essentially the same amount of gas, but I did notice this result of new water. Just bigger bubbles coming out. It means the tubes just need more work, more conditioning. Final discovery is that adding these two 20 microfarad capacitors in parallel with my first in last out grants me a few more volts. I'd like to maybe increase the capacitance by a couple more of these and see what happens from there. See if we can increase the capacitance in parallel to this thing to see how it would affect voltage. Capacitors give us kind of like a more expanding waveform, I guess you could say, but I'm out for the night. Peace.
This is Stan's Revenge.
Alright, what do we have here? Is it Christmas? Is it Christmas already? Ooh, look at that. That look good. Ooh, yeah. Let's see if this is what I've been searching for. These puppies aren't cheap by any stretch. Oh yeah, she is. Brand spanking new Triad Magnetics VPT48-10400. We're going to wind another one of these puppies in a different configuration. We're going to test between them, see which one better, and then we're going to migrate from that one and make a better one from that. And we're just going to keep ping-ponging. So I always have one in production and I always have one achieving the next level. Big shout out to my camera lady today. Appreciate you. Alright, y'all. Version 1, version 2. I took all the scrap stainless steel enameled magnet wire I had. You can kind of barely see that kind of gold color. Very crudely wrapped all the way around here. Let's see what it measures in at. Alright, as a base reference, our original coil measures in about 150 millihenries. Wow, we have a whopping 250 millihenries on this. We certainly have enough windings. With my scraps here, essentially combined a few different coils here. They're essentially taps now, as you can see them bound together. So just without these two additional taps or whatever, we're at 186, which is in the neighborhood. So we'll probably just take these off altogether and just go from here. Okay, current config here is 1.89 kilohertz. I'm getting up to 120 volts across that cell. Peak there. 850 milliamps at the cell. Definite appropriate production. That's our waveform. Consuming almost 6 amps at 29 volts. There's 120 volts at the cell, but I am freaking out, man. I wonder if I can identify where it's freaking out at. Definitely making bubbles, so I gotta move this thing outside. Wow, maxed out 126 volts, 1.1 amps. But dude, 126 volts almost across that cell? Wow. Bugging out waveform. Yeah, 126 volts. Now, what's interesting here, this is maxing out at 32 volts, and my shit's going a little crazy, but that's with adding these two capacitors in parallel with my exciter array, with my capacitor array here. So, that is interesting. These little puppies are that. A new transformer in place. I got my rubber gloves here to kind of help protect the windings. So interesting, here we're using the entire custom wound coil from last tap all the way through. So what was that inductance of like 280 millihenries? And, you know, originally we, the other one measured in at, what, 150 millihenries? Now check this out. Here we're getting our trademark equal opposite polarity, but you can see we're already off balance there. It's not equal. And we just have more negative voltage potential than positive potential. See, that's over 2 at the bottom here on the green, and the blue is only at 1 there. So we have a severe imbalance here. But, you know, we're able to get, you know, achieve up to 60 volts here and only 24 milliamps at the cell and 200 milliamps consumed. That's pretty cool. Production wise though, at 60 volts across the span of cells, we have just enough voltage to make just the tiniest amount of bubbles. So we're not at that voltage level yet. Essentially what, half of what we were achieving just previously. Now we can crank it up to 32 volts input, and it only pushes up a couple milliamps there. Really doesn't do much for voltage. I mean, just negligible, like 60 to 66 maybe. Let's up the duty pulse here. That's at our 85% duty cycle. We're up to 72 volts, still only 38 milliamps at the cell, which is stellar. We got, you know, equal opposite polarity here, but still 72 volts is only 3 volts per tube. So, I mean, I would say that's appropriate production for just 3 volts per tube, which is essentially, you know, no production at all. Real production starts in the neighborhood about 4 to 5 volts, and then when you get to 6 volts, you really start making some gas. So, do love the amp savings here, and do love the amps here. Maybe I need to do a comparison about how many amps are at the cell at 70 some volts to do a comparison of that last. Idea is that stainless steel is going to do wonders in terms of amp restriction. For obvious reasons. You know, maybe I need just more inductance on that, more wines to balance it out, to see maybe what voltage can do from there. Our original secondary coil was about 200 millihenries, as verified with the other secondary coil there. So yeah, verifying that the original custom wound inductor here was at 140 millihenries. So there's definitely some properties that are different apparently with stainless steel versus copper, but in different ways I had expected. You know, to verify this custom stainless steel windings are 198 millihenries. So maybe we do need to get closer to the original measurements of the secondary coil being around 250 millihenries. As opposed to, you know, the copper ones, which we only needed 100 and whatever millihenries to balance that waveform. So the inductance properties of stainless steel is apparently different from that of copper. I guess it takes more stainless steel windings to achieve the same amount of balance than a copper coil would. So just playing around with some more frequencies and stuff like that, I'm still only able to achieve, you know, 70 some volts at the cell, which is minuscule production. But here again we have this imbalance. You can see there's one block right there. They're almost balanced right there, but as it grows, the imbalance becomes greater. We will try some more things. So if my new one measures in about 142, and my old one measured in more like 190 something, what's up with that? Alright, connected my old one back up. Nice balanced EOP. Here, just want to compare what 70 volts looks like on my other one here. We achieved 70 some volts here at 1.7 amps, so we were way lower with the other setup, achieving that voltage level. I'll have to see what the milliamperage was. I think it's a little bit higher, perhaps double. But still, for, you know, 70 some volts at the cell, we have appropriate production for 70 volts on the cell. So, if we can get the new one to that voltage level, I believe the amperage will be extremely low. Like extremely low. Okay, back at this frequency here. We're in that 1K frequency range here with all these tests here. But at 70 some volts, yeah, we got, 1.8 amps in. Let's dial this down just a little bit. With just the tiniest bit of voltage, it wants to get to 75 volts. But we're at 2 amps though. Now that we have this operating the way it should, that's more like the waveform I want to see. We're close to equal, opposite. That's right there. Need a little bit more on the positive there. But for all intents and purposes, let's bring this thing to 70 volts. Because this is where I was pretty much previously. Similar amperage, but we do have way higher voltage at the cell. I'm sorry. We do have appropriate, I guess. So, I would venture to say that we got 12 volts in at 300 milliamps to produce that 70 some volts at the cell. Let's see what we could take this thing to. Oh my god. How is that going to 160 volts? Good lord, do you see this? 160 at like 3-4 amps? What is happening? Oh my god, hang on. What is happening? Wow, wow, what is the reasoning for that? Wow, okay. Interesting. What's happening? Oh my god, what is happening? So, like, went from like 125 to like 160? How? I want to know. I'm done for the day. We're going to have to take it another day. We're going to wind some more winds and go from there. I'm tired. Later.
This is Stan's Revenge.